Good afternoon, everybody. We've been waiting for folks to join, and we're just ready to get started now. So welcome to AWI's webinar on budgeting for cybersecurity in dental clinics across the country, coast to coast here in Canada. I'm David Monroe. I'm CEO of AWI. And Patrick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Patrick, and I also work at AWI. I'm the CTO and co-founder, and been working in cybersecurity for a little over 30 years now, so getting old.
Fantastic. And Pierluigi is joining us as well. Pierluigi?
Absolutely. Glad to be here. I've also been with AWI for a number of years now. Very proud to be working on just about anything that touches customer success and operations. So likely looking forward to having a conversation with any of you folks at some point in the future.
Fantastic. We're thrilled to be here. It's been a great journey over the last 7 or 8 months, starting with our relationship with the Canadian Dental Association, the OASIS interviews we've been doing, a whole suite of webinars, and this is one of them today. And glad to see everybody here. So why don't we just jump right into the content, Pat?
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you want me to start, because I think we have a fairly good subject today that we want to talk about. And it's all about, budgeting for cybersecurity, which is something I guess that most dental clinics are not used to, and this is not something they do. So if you think about it, David, can you think about like what are the biggest mistakes that the dental clinics owner make regarding cybersecurity?
Yeah, it's a great way to kick things off, and a great question, Pat. And I think we need to kind of go right back to the foundation that those of us who are involved in topics that aren't, integrated into our daily activities, we often don't know what we don't know. So in the context of cybersecurity in a dental practice, what we see often is that when a dental clinic owner is trying to do something kind of proactively, they're not really aware of the scope of the threats, the existential nature of the threats, so they might typically under budget. And what that causes is that threat layers, threat surfaces remain exposed. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, if a dental clinic owner has experienced some type of a cyber breach, then they tend to have a tendency to over budget, to go, gosh, that was really painful. There's a whole bunch of things I've got to do. So like many things in life, it's not black and white. There's shades of gray. And what we need to do, and I think we'll talk a little bit about this as the conversation goes on today, is try to create a framework or a lens, if you will, that somebody who's operating, managing, owning a dental clinic or dental clinics can use to really assess where their spend needs to be to get them adequate safety to ensure that they're not breached in a way that would be detrimental to the dental clinic.
Yeah, you're right, and I think thinking about that is going to be very helpful for everyone.
Absolutely, and when we start to talk about that, everything seems to, in this world of ever-increasing cost, everything comes down to dollars and cents. And it really comes down to what do the financial terms, look like potentially for a dental clinic? What are the things that they need to start kind of putting a fence around to put it in some sort of a perspective for themselves from a financial perspective?
Yeah, that's a tough question, I think, to answer, because there's a lot of numbers out there, but I don't think there's specific numbers for dental clinics. But if we look at it from different angles, Net Diligence did a survey just last year, less than a year ago, as a matter of fact. And through that survey, they found out that most small and medium businesses in Canada, when they experience an incident or a cyber incident, it costs them around $250,000. So that's the average. So that means that for some of them, it's smaller than that, but for some of them, it's a lot bigger than that. Right. And when we look worldwide, I mean, numbers are out of this world. For example, worldwide last year, the ransomware incidents on average was about $600,000. So obviously that includes very large companies, but
Sure.
also small and medium ones. And out of these costs, obviously, it's not just the incident itself that the clinic or the business has to think about. It's all the costs associated to it, like legal fees, recovery, operational fees, for example, the loss of business for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and that costs a lot of money. So when you look at that, thinking about budgeting after an incident is really a little bit hard because it puts a lot of pressure on the dental clinic itself. And if you had to look at it from a different angles, what would be the usual cyber budget for a clinic?
Well, that really gets into a multifaceted conversation. And there is a foundational level that's required for any kind of a business. Now, if you're a 200-person firm, or you're a 12 or 14-person dental clinic, that foundation, there's a minimum level of security that you need to put in place. So that becomes a bit of a challenge to get your head around. And that's why having the lens and the framework to look at it through is so important, because your first reaction might be, well, geez, maybe that's a little bit more than I need. But what's really critical, especially for folks who are coming to this topic kind of new, is that cybersecurity isn't just a product line. It's not just installing your firewall. And to that point, we've seen some clinics that will install a firewall, just for instance, but not realize the complexity of configuration to ensure it's doing the job it needs to do. But ultimately, to make the investment, to spend the money, it's got to be across a set of different parameters. So yes, there are some products, some cybersecurity products that need to be put in place, but it's a mix of the people. We see relentlessly the research that shows that despite the hundreds of millions of dollars that are spent annually on cybersecurity awareness, that human error is still the #1 cause of cyber breaches. So getting the right kind of cybersecurity awareness training in place that engages the users in a way that is meaningful and provides the deep insights you need to understand competency is critical. There's the software piece. There's outsourced expertise. On one of our previous webinars, we talked about the importance of an owner of a dental clinic having their own go-to advisor around cybersecurity to keep their MSP honest, to know that they're doing the right things. These people go to school for years and take added diploma programs to get the expertise they have. No dental clinic owner can hope to be able to amass that expertise on top of running their practice and delivering great care to their patients. So the training, and then ultimately the operating discipline. And the reason I share that is that when we see a dental clinic make an investment, the right investment even, there still is the chance for it to fall down. And I say that because the right leadership has to come from the top. It has to be a non-negotiable with staff that this is a must-have, that the 8 or 10 minutes a month that may be necessary to consume the animated videos and demonstrate competency in an interactive lab is non-negotiable, because it's so critical to the well-being ultimately of the clinic's survival and future.
Yeah, you're right. That's pretty interesting.
So if those are the kinds of things that are really critical, how, Pat, do we help our dental clinic friends start to get an actual accurate picture of what the kind of required spend is going to be necessary in their potential dental clinic environment?
And I think that's the real question. No, that's what everybody wants to know about. Where do I need to spend my money, and what do I base my budget on? So the thing is, as you said earlier, small businesses like dental clinics are not necessarily extremely different than even a little bigger enterprise, which is 200 employees. Obviously, yes, the size matters, but the threats are the same. So to answer your questions, you mentioned a few times about lenses, and I think this is probably the best recommendation that we do make. Take a look at the budgeting from 4 different lenses. The first one is threats.
Mhm.
If you think about it, what is really the threat about your business? You might not know everything, and you might not know every way that bad guys will try to get at you, but think about it this way. Where or how am I going to lose money? And if so, how much money can I lose? So for example, if I'm down in my business for 3 weeks, for example, how much is that going to cost?
Mhm.
And that's the threat lens. So obviously, we don't want people to panic from there. We want people to just start thinking about it, just a little bit like your house. You're thinking about it from
Sure.
a fire perspective. You're going to say, oh, shoot, if my house burns down, I'm going to lose, let's say, $500,000. Well, that's fine. You have a number now. Does that mean that you need to pay an insurance policy, $500,000 a year to save your house? Absolutely not. But that gives you a starting point.
Mhm.
The second lens is a little bit more tricky because it's about compliance. Most of you should know about that because there are laws and regulations out there that mandate you to do something to protect the data. And those laws and regulations are not kidding around. They're there for a reason. They're there because the government wants to protect citizens. But not only that, the industry itself wants to put some protection in there. So those protections are the minimum or the strict minimum that you need to think about. And if you haven't done so, that needs to be taken into account because that does help to cyber protect your data. Next is probably the lens of market cost. If you think about it, how much are you paying right now for your IT services? How much a year are you spending on IT in general and support, etc.? Technically, that lens gives you a pretty good idea of your IT budget, and a portion of that IT budget should be dedicated to cybersecurity. So if you know that IT budget, let's say it's $20,000 a year or $50,000 a year, if you know that the industry average spends, let's say, 12 to 15% on cybersecurity, then it gives you an idea where to start. And obviously, those 3 lenses give you a quick range. And lastly, obviously, if you can, benchmark yourself against other industries, but also maybe other dental clinics. What are the others doing? How much are they spending? What is the average? And again, there's a ton of data about that. Business.com actually just published a survey about 3 or 4 weeks ago about the cost of doing cybersecurity in different type of businesses. And you can use that as a benchmark to try to budget yourself and budget what is reliable for your clinic. So for example, in that study, they found out that in the Canadian market, the average for small businesses is between, let's say, 10,000 to 17,000 a year. So again, that's an average. Some of them are lower than that. Some of them are obviously higher than that, but that gives you a quick idea of where to budget. So budgeting is one thing, but once you have that budget, like where do you spend it? And I think you probably have some ideas about that, David.
Well, yeah, there's, again, it's not, there is no silver bullet. It is, like we talked about, it's operational discipline and it's training and it's software and it's cybersecurity products at one end. When we start to talk about where the money gets spent, it's a very similar kind of matrix of different areas that require financial investment. So identity and multi-factor authentication. So ensuring that the systems are protected in a multifaceted way so that it's not easy for the cyber criminals to be able to gain access to those systems and the critical information that sits behind them. Endpoint and email. One of the biggest issues we see, and by the way, identity and multi-factor authentication, it's about 12 or 13% of whatever that amount that you're going to spend. Endpoint and email. And email is an interesting one. We've been involved in this industry now for a year or two. And one of the things that's quite different about it is that many people operating in dental clinics are using their own private emails. And that causes another real challenge. Because if that email is compromised in another place that they're using those credentials, then that could transpose itself onto the business of the clinic. So, in fact, that's one of the biggest spend areas that should be contemplated, and it's around 23% of what a budget might be. Backup and recovery. And one of the things we talked about on one of our previous webinars is this concept of immutable backup. Because now the bad guys have found a way to get to backups and then corrupt those backups. So it's a constant shell game, right, of trying to stay ahead of them. And by making your investments with the right partners, you're going to ensure that you're staying ahead of that curve. That spend is around 18%. Now, the primary focus of our business around awareness training is, in fact, one of the smallest areas of spend. And it's around 7%. But it's also a very, very critical foundational element, because if 95% of cyber breaches involve human error, that's the weakest link. So that 7%, if spent properly, can start to transition that weakest link into the first line of defense. Monitoring, disaster recovery. Again, second largest area of spend, around 22%. Ensuring you have the right partner who's going to monitor your systems and then have a plan in place and a practice to engage in that's going to allow you to recover as quickly as possible. And then finally, assessment and IR prep, and that's around 18%. It's third or fourth on the list, a critical component as well. But again, all of these things have to be working simultaneously together.
Yeah, and when you mention IR prep, I guess IR stands for incident response. So you want to be prepared for specific incident, just like you're asking your patients to be prepared in case something happens.
Yep. As clinics start to go down this path, one of the questions we get asked is, what's the first step I can take? Because every journey begins with a first step, no matter what the topic is or wherever you're going in life. And I think a really good first step is just identifying the systems that stop if, what stops care being able to be delivered if they're unavailable.
Yeah.
Because if you can't get access to your radiography equipment, or you can't see your calendar, you don't know what patients are coming in, you don't know what phone calls you have to make to fill the calendar for next Monday. This becomes just a foundational element. And as you start to identify those things, you start to go, oh, okay, now I'm starting to know the things I didn't know.
Yep, you're right. And identifying those things is probably the first best step, because if we know what we gain to lose, if I can say that, then we can put a price on it. We can say, oh, okay, if I don't have that system, this is how much it's costing me a day or a year or an hour, whatever. So you can put a price on the revenue disruption, but you can put a price also maybe on recovery. And once you have that, then you have a starting point, as we said earlier, for your budget.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it leads to, counting users, counting endpoints. What are the privileged accounts that have access? And if you really start to take an inventory of those, you might find it's a little bit more complex. It's a little larger than maybe you thought it was at the outset. And again, this is part of the peeling back of the onion, if you will. You start to peel back the layers and you find, wow, there's more below the surface. There's more that I didn't know that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and by knowing that, you know exactly, the size of the stack, as we mentioned. And from there, you can say, okay, what is the minimum viable stack that I need to put in? So you mentioned 6 different types of controls earlier. That budget to spend is between, let's say, 7 to 25% or so. So once you know that and you have your budget, then you can start with these small building blocks. And again, ask your IT person, if you have an IT person, or maybe someone you really trust, some kind of an advisor, to help you make sure that you're making the right decision. And that does really help do the budget from there.
Oh, for sure. And you hit on a great point there, Pat. You know, many dental clinic owners do have an MSP. Some of them are more proficient in cybersecurity than others. But try to identify a cybersecurity resource that you feel comfortable with and that you can rely on, and you can outsource some of the judgment necessary to make the right decisions and build a relationship with them so that you get to know them, they get to know you, they become literally a virtual extension of you as the dental clinic owner, and you can sleep at night knowing that collectively between the two of you, you're making the right decisions.
Absolutely, that certainly helps. And you know what, there's probably like 20,000 different things that we would like to say to you today, but what we just said in that webinar and what we just mentioned is all available on our blog post. So if you go on our website and you search the blog post, we have a very nice blog post that was created a few weeks ago about budgeting, and there's more details in there that will help you budget. And we're working also on a quick tool that you would be able to use to help you budget, where you can plug in your own numbers, a little bit like an Excel spreadsheet, where you just put in whatever you know about your business, and that will really help you budget it properly. So we really propose to you that you contact us to have that tool if you want it, or follow us on our blog post, and we'll be able to post it there probably very soon.
The last thing I would share, Pat, is this continuing nature of focus that's important. You know, when we developed our solution in cybersecurity awareness education, one of the things we learned from the human behavioral psychology department at the University of Laval was the importance of the drip of information, the continual engagement, to go from the unconsciously incompetent to the unconsciously competent at the other end of the spectrum. And from a cybersecurity perspective in a dental clinic, when you're looking at it holistically, from where do you invest, how do you invest, and why, what you should really try and do with your trusted advisor is find 4 or 5 metrics that you can track on a quarterly basis, just like a board of directors in a publicly traded company has KPIs that they use to determine whether that organization is on the right track. And keep it front and center on a quarterly basis. Make it part of how you operate. Make it a foundational element of the business plan for your dental clinic.
Yeah, and maybe that's not something that the dentist himself or herself want to do, but maybe the dental clinic manager wants to be able to do that and create those KPIs and try to follow them on a regular basis. I think that's a great idea.
Well, look, I want to thank everybody who joined us today. It's always a pleasure doing these. We find this is a higher calling and a purpose for us, and we're here to try and make the dental community in Canada a little bit more cyber resilient and a little more careful every day. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Take care.
All right. Bye for now.